Daniel, thank you so much for joining us from the Air Force side of the house. We're really proud to have you here. I'm going to give you about 10 minutes right now, and then we'll have a couple minutes for questions if that works for you.
Awesome. Thanks, John. Thanks, everyone else, for inviting me to this. Not sure how I got this.
Your reputation panel precedes you, Daniel.
All right. Trying to get some slides up, maybe. Maybe not. Maybe. So, I'm Master Sergeant Hogan Norn, and I run a squadron innovation cell, and that's what I'm going to talk about today. So, yep, who am I? Like I said, sushi snob. I'm enlisted aircrew, not a pilot. I get that question a lot. Been in for about 11-ish years. Had 4 knee surgeries, and I like to read a lot. What I'm going to talk about today, some negative brainstorming, really, some patterns to avoid, and how I set up my innovation cell, and then some little details with that, and then like tell a story at the end. So part of my job duties is teaching people different creativity, brainstorming type skills. One of the easiest ones that I like to do is negative brainstorming. So you have your problem and you reverse it. For some reason, your brain works a lot faster and better coming up with negative things than positive, right? So you take your problem, you flip it, and how could I make this worse? And then you come up with a big list of those things, then you kind of flip those, and then that gives you some insights. So the things I've seen with different innovation cells, things I was trying to avoid when I set mine up, run through some of those. So the lone hero, right? Seen this where there's that one guy who has a computer science degree. I'm going to fix this problem, so sets up a Microsoft Access thing or some other tool. Works great, but then he leaves. No one knows how to use it, and the organization reverts back to the old thing. Something else, the idea collection funnel. So you need some kind of funnel for getting your ideas in. And usually there's some kind of web funnel or something. But the danger here is there needs to be something behind that. A lot of times, or I've seen where you put your idea in and then nothing. So if you're setting up one of these, make sure there's something on the back end. Make sure that it's trackable. People can see what happened to their idea. They get a reply back. So Skunk Works. I kind of like this idea, but you have to be careful that you're not isolating yourself and that you're not making things, you're doing your cool projects over on the side, but then the main organization status quo gets to continue. People keep doing things like they've always done them, and there's no bridge between the two. The Penthouse Suite. This is where some top level in the organization decides to spin up an innovation cell. Do innovation, but it's not connected to the bottom. They try to do the projects themselves. So that can work if it's set up for enabling, but if they're trying to do their own projects, it's usually disconnected from the end user. And sometimes it turns into, I call it rent seeking. So, hey, all the innovation cells under report up, and then we'll pass up your information. It doesn't add value. So the do-it-yourself, there is some good to this. What I'm talking about here is where you come up with a problem, and then because you're the one that came up with the problem, you're on the hook to fix it. Which, yes, however, you have to think about situations where the person with the problem doesn't have the capability of fixing it. They have a problem, the solution is building maybe some app or something. That person doesn't know how to program, then what? So you don't want to exceed, or you don't want to limit yourself to your existing skills. This one, I hope I don't ruffle too many feathers here. I see people they say their innovation cell, they don't want to do projects. They're focused on changing culture, creating culture of innovation, which is good. That should be the goal for every innovation cell, right? But I have a theory here that I stole from someone else. Innovation or culture by itself, that's not a real thing. You can't change culture. There's things that contribute to culture. Culture is a product of systems and other things. So systems drive innovation. There's this guy, pander to the Navy folks out there, David Goggins, right? He has a famous saying, that's who's going to lift the boats. So you're focused on culture, that's good, but at the end of the day, you need to do some things to make sure that that's part of the strategy. When I set up my innovation cell, I came up with a actual written out strategy so that I would have something to follow. I'm not really going to dive too deeply into it, but just so you guys believe me. The main idea is to create a clear pathway for innovation. Someone has an idea, they're able to take it to execution or operationalize it. Want to connect, inspire, and empower. So creating those relationships, not just between me and other people, but between the airmen in my organization and the greater innovation ecosystem. Kind of what I'm doing right now. Then standardizing innovation. I don't want it to be personality dependent where after I leave, things fall apart, or it depends on certain skills of certain people we have, and then when they PCS, we can't do things anymore. So I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second here. With the strategy, there's some nuances that I'd like to pull out, things I've thought about a little bit, ideas I've stolen from various books and whatnot. This one I took from the urban philosopher, DJ Khaled. Nice things cost money, right? He has this video where he says, you like these high ceilings, you like these marble floors, those aren't cheap. I have to go make money, right? So the idea here is, this might be a little cynical too, free things tend to not have value. I've seen where there's successful little cells, but then squadron leadership changes and it's, okay, that was cute, now get back to work. My strategy for avoiding this is imposing a little bit of cost, right? Nice things cost money. Create a little pain and sacrifice, make it painful. So if you have to sacrifice for something, you're probably going to value it a little bit more. Have some kind of process and structure with what you're doing. I talked about this previously, so I'll double tap it. Some of the things we're using, lean startup. The Air Force is big on a continuous process improvement, Six Sigma. That's an established process when you're trying to improve the performance of a process. So, and then having an actual JQS. So rather than I'm a smart guy, I'll run the innovation cell, have an actual list of trainings that the person running the cell needs to have, and so that it can replicate and go to the next person. Speaking of training, train for what you need. A lot of strategy documents, they talk about we're going to need to move to AI, whatnot. All the great AI programmers out there, they already have really high paying jobs. Not going to magically get them. So we need to start thinking about training for those skills we need. You sometimes see this at a local level where there's a project and they put out a call. Hey, does anyone know how to use Microsoft Access? Does anyone know Python? Nothing really wrong with that. But if you need those skills, you need to start thinking about adding those into your training pipeline or getting people spun up on that stuff. My innovation cell is intentionally small. It's just me actually doing it full time. The model I'm using is when I'm doing a project, I pull in people for 4 to 6 weeks, teach them a new process, whether that's Scrum, Kanban, some other analytical technique. It's higher level skills they need so that they can do the project. And then when they go back to their work sections, they have these new upgraded skills. This one I'm still working on, a sandbox for the innovation cell to work in. This helps de-risk your ideas. You can try stuff low cost without impacting your actual operations. And then it increases your bias towards action. Just go try it, right? If it's not going to break anything, if there's a safe place to test it, just try it, see what happens. Encourage everyone to connect their innovation cell to a larger ecosystem. Don't forget about your local small businesses and things. So I'm in Omaha. We have some incredible local businesses that the DoD doesn't really work with. We have people doing AI. We have programming companies. There's maker spaces. You probably have some incredible local talent to make use of. This one is maybe a little subversive. Protecting your babies, right? So in essence, asking for forgiveness in operation. It's a lot easier or it's a lot harder for a leader or somebody in the chain, because there's never a single person you have to run ideas through. Say, no, don't do that. But if you already did it and it worked, then it's a different conversation, right? This one is more directed towards leaders, and I think Brandon's going to post an article in the chat. To make life easier for your innovation cell, there needs to be a need for change. Status quo needs to be a little uncomfortable. So turn up the heat, not too much, but manage that so that there's a felt need to do something to move forward. 10 minutes. Do we still have time, or do we want to go to questions?
Absolutely. We still have time. Go ahead.
Okay.
Gentlemen,
So-
I'm afraid actually our next
Yeah.
speaker just dialed in. Daniel, I think we're off to the races and you've given us a lot to chew on here. If you don't
Yep.
mind handling a couple of the questions that are showing up in the Q&A section, there were some questions in particular about any reading you might recommend. I just want to thank you for taking the time here. We really appreciate having you on, and
Yeah,
you stick
definitely.
around for a little bit. We'll see if we can find you some more time, maybe during one of the intermissions later. Thank you so much.